When there is only poverty and crime, there is only one solution: kill dragons. In the weird timeline that you and I find ourselves in today, this mystical phrase is actually all that is very real, because at the bottom of the social pyramid of MMORPGs, even below the noob who started the game 2 weeks earlier, we find the sprawling catgirl erotic RP practitioner, okay, but still below, we find the gold dealer. Everyone hates those who choose to sell gold, but is it really a choice when the only two options are gold farming or starvation? Welcome to the hidden side of virtual gold resale. The situation is critical. After being the richest country in South America thanks to its economy based almost entirely on oil exploitation, when the price of a barrel fell in 2014, it dragged Venezuela into a terribly dark period. Its currency, the bolivar, is collapsing and continues to collapse. So to compensate, Venezuela is printing banknotes, too many banknotes, and in less than a year, inflation can be counted in millions of percent. It took 10 bolivars to have a dollar in 2014. It took 20,000 bolivars to have a dollar in 2017. Today, in November 2024, it takes 4,413,220. And what happens in a country when banknotes are worth less than the paper on which they are printed? Well, trade will start to take place in another currency, a more stable foreign currency, the US dollar. It also means that without access to dollars, there is no access to food, housing, and medicine. So the question is, how do you find dollars when you live in the depths of Venezuela if you want to avoid falling asleep on an empty stomach? And the answer that has been found is called... In 2014, Victor has been playing Runescape for years. When his country sank into this insane inflation, he decided to turn his passion into a job, making his time and abilities available to European and American players, and that's how he finds dollars. In a country where a doctor now earns $15 a month, Victor earns more than $400 thanks to Runescape. And this old MMO is a perfect answer to this precarious situation. In fact, it is even the only possible option. Firstly, because it is free, it runs even on a very bad machine, and it does not require a good connection or know-how worthy of the greatest gamers in this world. But even more important, its currency, the gold coin, has been trading at an almost fixed rate against the dollar for nearly 2 decades, with a number of buyers that never falters. So Victor shares the good plan with his friends, who in turn will also share it with their loved ones, and the news spread like wildfire in the country. A way to survive, with easy access to dollars for a few hours of play, in a country where 11 out of 10 people live below the poverty line. You would have to be crazy not to take the plunge. And in Gelenor, the world of Runescape, we are slowly starting to feel the effects of this crisis. The chat channels are filled with messages in Spanish, and many players who seem desperate for the slightest gold coin offer their service of all kinds. One guild in particular quickly understood what was going on. That guild is Reign of Terror, and they live up to their name terribly. This is the ruthless PvP guild par excellence in Runescape. Any player knows and fears them. They are cruel, inflexible, and led with an iron fist. Reign of Terror will see in its gold-hungry newcomers an opportunity. What they are going to do is hire this cheap Venezuelan labor force and make it their personal militia. They will place this militia at the entrances to the high-profit farming areas, the most famous being the Revenant Caves, to block the passage and kill anyone who tries to approach the area, while the Reign of Terror can quietly seize all the resources inside and pay a small percentage of them to this hungry militia. It will work for a while, but as the months go by, the Venezuelan militia grows and learns more and more about Runescape, until the day they understand that they could just make a lot more gold and therefore money in real life if they themselves controlled the Revenant Caves. What followed was one of Runescape's most memorable battles and arguably the most important. The battle for control of the Cave of the Revenants, opposing the Venezuelan militia to their former employer, Reign of Terror. People who are literally fighting for the survival of their families against the PvP legends of Runescape. It will last more than a week. But the motivation to put bread on the table, coupled with the striking power of the very large number of Venezuelan players, will gradually take over. On the 7th day, the cave was under the control of this small South American country. And from there, these virtual gold prospectors were able to multiply their income. RuneScape had become a real way out of poverty, and it will take more and more space in the country. They start to learn better techniques, equip themselves better and better in the game, and organize themselves into a farm to pay only one internet subscription because every penny counts. Many have been able to save up and leave the country for more stable countries, such as Peru. But if some nice stories may have ended well, unfortunately it is a trap for the majority of them. Because once there, the $300 a month that RuneScape brings them is no longer enough to survive, so many of them return to Venezuela even more ruined than when they left, where others fall into much darker activities. We are talking about an atrocious situation for these people, but one that is also disrupting the economy of RuneScape. A lot of gold and rare items injected into the game every day, it totally changes the way you approach it, because gold is at the center of everything in RuneScape. Except that with this astronomical amount of gold inoculated in the game, sellers will drastically increase their price. And so for the average player who doesn't buy one, nothing is accessible anymore. According to Jagex themselves, RuneScape's developers, nearly half of their users have already used services to sell or buy gold. The problem? This Venezuelan labor that costs between 0.5 and 0.75 cents per hour is unbeatable and just makes it too easy to buy gold. And if everyone has the best equipment, a lot of gold and rare components easily, then the game loses all its flavor and challenge. The community will also fracture. On the one hand, there are some players who are affected by this story and who will decide to help the Venezuelans financially by giving them farming advice or even equipment. As for the others who believe that these players are ruining the game and its economy, they will just throw all their hatred to chase them away constantly and do everything to ruin their work to the point of creating guides on how to take down groups of Venezuelans. This frantic virtual gold panning will continue until 2019 when nothing. The blackout, complete darkness. The government no longer has the means to properly maintain the infrastructure. For almost a week, the population was without electricity. The hospital sector is obviously the most affected. For patients who need to be on dialysis or waiting for surgery, it is a disaster, and for the workers of RuneScape, it is the pure and simple loss of their livelihood. Do you know the butterfly effect? Can the flapping of a butterfly's wing in Brazil cause a tornado in Texas? Well, when an intern tripped over an electric cable in Venezuela, it caused an economic crisis in RuneScape. This constant influx of gold and rare materials that is cut off all at once will turn the economy upside down. And at Jagex, which until now has been rather flexible given the IRL situation, Venezuelans understand that they have to act. They too have a family to feed and depend on RuneScape's health to do so. If Venezuelans continue to pump so much gold into the game, RuneScape will suffer the exact same fate as Venezuela. Jagex says, of course we sympathize with the terrible situation in which the Venezuelan people find themselves, but gold farmers have no place in the game. We don't particularly target Venezuelans, but we act neutrally. If an account is likely to break the rules, then it will simply be banned. To all this will be added the closure of the cave of the returnees and other areas with very high profitability. The purchase of gold is now much more punished, and IPs from Venezuela are apparently monitored, but in your opinion, has this had any effect? Well, no, not really. If a person in Venezuela made $300 with RuneScape and now makes $150 or even $30, it's still profitable for him, and that's still significantly higher than the average salary. Whatever happens, in the current situation for these people, the fastest route to dollars, and therefore food, remains the RuneScape gold coin. The problem is that RuneScape in Venezuela is like putting a bandage on a severed arm. While a few lucky people have successfully settled abroad thanks to RuneScape, most Venezuelans continue to sink into poverty, and it's a story without a big good guy or big bad guy in reality. Apart from the few basin bottoms who do everything to kill them in the game, and who themselves in a one-week immersion course in Venezuela would also start farming gold after the second day, because seeing your child having half a meal a day is not the most pleasant thing. But apart from them, we can neither blame the Venezuelans who just want to eat their fill, nor Jagex, who tries to protect their game because they too have families to feed. And unfortunately, as things stand, there is no real solution either. If all customers stop buying gold overnight. There will potentially be IRL tragedies in Venezuela if the opposite happens. Far too much gold will continue to be injected into Runescape, the gold will no longer be worth anything, and therefore potentially IRL tragedies in Venezuela. Sometimes an improbable sequence of events will link two destinies that were not supposed to cross. Here, the survival of tens of thousands of people in South America and that of a legendary MMORPG. From this war for control of the Cave of the Revenants to the blackout of an entire country causing an economic crisis in Runescape, it's an absolutely crazy story, but unfortunately deeply sad and for the moment without a way out. Because when there is only poverty and crime, there is only one solution: kill dragons.